to another, please do it. And he said, for you, I'll do it.
They have by far the highest ceiling out of any team in the league. Elite talent, NBA talent, NBA shot making, versatility, and the best coach in the league in John Shire. They can beat you in multiple ways. Half court, full court, running gun, walk it up. And they out-execute you, maybe except for that game versus Texas Tech.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
When did we become, so bitter that we can't accept another man's apology? We make mistakes all the time. And as a grown man, you have to say, I'm sorry every once in a while. And it's okay to say that. And the apology, I think, should be accepted. And in this case, I'm accepting it.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
The Chicago Blackhawks of the National Hockey League are now official partners with Kalshi. It takes effect this week. Each side can use the other's intellectual property for co-marketing purposes, and Kalshi will be promoted during home games at the United Center and on Blackhawks broadcasts. First of its kind, certainly probably not the last as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Arvel Reese at 8%. I got to tell you right now, I have no idea who that is or if they're playing a Joe Bowman joke.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Who is that?
Here, but I have no idea.
You need to know?
But no idea. But don't you have to pick the Heisman winner, Don? Isn't that like the rule of thumb if you're going to take a quarterback? Is he not the best quarterback?
The Early Line, only on
Decisions live on SportsGrid on a Tuesday night. It is phenomenal to have you with us here on this Tuesday. Kevin Walsh with you from the Decisions Desk, where we have absolutely so much on the menu tonight. The NBA board, it's not huge. It's not bad, though. It's not a bad NBA slate. Your primetime matchups feature the Rockets and the Spurs in an important game from the Western Conference standings, and just the perception, I think, especially for Houston, who played this San Antonio team in a cup game and lost. And that's something that maybe is stuck with Houston a little bit. When you lose a cup game like this to a rival in San Antonio, late night Nuggets, Lakers, as Luka and LeBron are favorites in Denver. Of course, the Nuggets still trying to keep things afloat in the absence of Nikola Jokic. They've done a pretty good job with that. They had a little winning streak going, snapped by the NBA's recent juggernaut, Charlotte Hornets. Anyone figure this thing out? They just smoke teams. Like, OKC got smoked, and then it was like, wait, what was that about? Then they did it to the Lakers. They beat the Jazz by a gazillion. Hammered Denver. It happens. Listen, I don't know. This Hornets team has something going on. What you will also see on the NBA slate tonight is the Golden State Warriors taking the court for the first time since the Jimmy Butler torn ACL. I guess obviously the first time as it happened last night for the Warriors in a dominant victory over the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler goes down. What do the Warriors do? This is going to be a very difficult decision for this front office. They may have been drawing dead already in the Western Conference, to now have to go at this without Jimmy, who not only was one of their better players, but one of their few tradable pieces. If they were going to look to make a move, I don't know. Does Steph look around? Probably not. Does this make Draymond getting dealt more likely? Maybe. And we will talk tonight during Kevin 7 about some guys who could potentially be dealt this year at the deadline. We've got 7 of them listed out, and we have some of the prediction markets around a few of those names and the likelihood that we see some of these key names move. So we will get into that. NHL slate up for grabs, as always, on a Tuesday. You do have some primetime games, Dallas and Boston, with the Bruins, a slight road underdog, Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers at home, decent favorites against the New Jersey Devils. I'm sure plenty of you will be playing on the college basketball board tonight, where the SEC offers us a ranked versus ranked top 20 matchup. Arkansas and Vanderbilt, a line that has been flipping throughout the day. It is also a slate that gives us the best from the Big Ten, with Purdue out west against UCLA, a 17-1 Boilermakers team who right now has lost 4 in a row against the number. Are they asked to be beat, or are they going to be able to get right here against the Bruins team who desperately needs it? I think that's going to be a fun follow. And then at the top of the slate, it's Michigan and Indiana. The Wolverines on a bit of an ATS slide themselves, back home, though, after a double up on the West Coast where they won both games, both by 10. Neither, though, were covering efforts. They'll play 3 straight at home, the first tonight against Indiana, and they will line up as 15.5-point favorites. Speaking of Indiana, the Hoosiers get it done yesterday. 16-0, unbeaten national champions. A phenomenal football game against Miami where the Canes were able to cover and a 10-0 halftime score. Things got out of hand. A blocked punt touchdown, making the game 17-7, which was somewhat of a response to a Mark Fletcher 57-yard touchdown. All of a sudden, we had something going on. 24 points were scored in that fourth quarter. The biggest play of that game, arguably the Fernando Mendoza touchdown run on a 4th and 5. There was so many moments within this game. But I think the difference for this Indiana team, for me, when you tell the story of the Hoosiers, and this I think you can put it in comparison to last year, and I think you'll be able to put it into comparison for years to come, is they had Fernando Mendoza as their quarterback. The eventual number 1 overall pick, the Heisman Trophy winner, who I think is one of the easiest decisions we have ever seen the NFL offer up in terms of who is going to go number 1. And there's so many factors with that. There's a team drafting at 1 who needs a quarterback. There are no other good quarterbacks, it feels like, in this first round available. And it's not even loaded with non-quarterback stars. There's debates back and forth on Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain, who played in this football game. The wide receivers are not offering up guaranteed all-pros. And then there's also the fact that I believe Fernando Mendoza can't miss. I believe when you look at the track record, you look at the guys that Mendoza gets compared to, I know it makes people feel uncomfortable. It's a pathway that resembles Joe Burrow's. And Joe Burrow can't miss. So is Fernando Mendoza. This is not something to be overthought. People today wondering, should Vegas trade that pick? No, obviously not. They should draft Fernando Mendoza, and I think they know that, as they had their entire brass, maybe most notably Tom Brady, in the building for that national championship game, where they watched their soon-to-be franchise quarterback win a national championship and close off an unbeaten season. And when one season closes, another opens. One of my always favorite traditions is the next day outright market, which, across different books, the favorite, the Ohio State Buckeyes, alongside the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. How in the world did we keep that team out of the playoff? The world may never know. The world could very well have been a different place. Notre Dame right up there with Indiana, Texas, Oregon. A little bit of a drop-off, and then you get into the Georgia Bulldogs, Lane Kiffin, and the LSU Tigers. I'm already excited for next year's college football season. I think some of that can even be informed through the Heisman Trophy market, as the names you see at the top, in large part, are holdovers, right? C.J. Carr, Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith, Dante Moore, Gunnar Stockton. Yes, please. Right? These are guys we were involved with last year, and it sets up for a run back. So we'll talk a little bit more about that national championship market. What we will also do here tonight on Game Time Decisions, okay? Our guy Brady Cannon always with us, of course. We will talk some conference championship lines. I am super curious to see how Brady booked the Jarrett Stidham number and what he makes of that matchup against the New England Patriots. We will also talk about the Amex as the PGA Tour continues the American Express tournament with Scottie Scheffler back in the fold, which means the starting price for the favorite is 3-1, and no other golfer is shorter than 20-1. Scottie Scheffler, only one like it. We will also talk to NFL insider Adam Kaplan tonight around some of the news that we've seen in the National Football League, including Robert Saleh getting the job with the Tennessee Titans. What does that mean for Matt Nagy? Maybe we'll get into that here on Game Time Decisions, because man without a home. He was, he's got a job, his job in Kansas City. They let him walk. Tennessee Titans almost hired a guy who now is unlikely to be an offensive coordinator this year. Kind of made a good decision, Tennessee. Safe to say. I think so, at least. Okay, quick break coming up. When we come back, we go to the NBA board tonight, along with our team best bets. I like this NBA card. Rocket Spurs headlines it. There's my favorite angle on the slate tonight comes from that game. We'll get our crew's best bets as well next, right here on SportsGrid.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, locked and loaded here on a Tuesday night. We will get to the college card in our next segment. 4 picks for me on the college slate. Some of the best bets from our team tonight will come from the college game as well. But for me, a best bet is on the NBA side tonight. It's the Rockets and the Spurs, an 8 o'clock tip primetime slot here, where Houston's a 4.5-point favorite against San Antonio. My best bet's a prop. We'll get to that in a moment. I will say I spent quite a while working through this side as Houston kind of jumped off the page a bit at 4.5 rest advantage. San Antonio played last night against Utah at home, so not a lot of travel, but still the back-to-back edge, we know that is there. I couldn't get there, though, and it's kind of both parties, really. The Rockets are still not playing great basketball right now. And I know they have won 2 in a row, one against Minnesota and one against New Orleans, but that it's not enough, right? I think this Rockets team, we think back earlier season, right? Their best basketball, I mean, they had some of those, I don't know, maybe a touch under OKC blowouts, right? We saw them winning games 128 to 100. That was something that they were capable of. It's been a while since we've seen this offense hit 120. The first day of 2026 and not since. And I do think that, at least from an efficiency end, that's when we feel best about Houston. And we have seen San Antonio answer this bell, right? Where, hey, it's a tough spot, back-to-back, what can you expect? And they're up early, up at the break, close game in the fourth. We've seen that before. And I think it makes the total very difficult, right? Because San Antonio can dictate this total. It doesn't feel as if the Rockets are getting to 120, the Spurs are coming right with them, right? But this is also going to be one of those grind-out slugfests. The Spurs are not uncomfortable in those waters. So, side-wise, total-wise, I felt it was necessary to take a step back. There were some Kevin Durant numbers I was tempted to play, but I think we've seen this San Antonio group be willing to get aggressive, and we know how that can throw KD a little bit off his platform. He is coming off efficiency end. One of the worst games he's had, if not the worst game this NBA season, shooting 5 of 18 against New Orleans, scoring just 18 points. But and again, usually I love me a bounce back spot. I'm not sprinting to it, right? I think KD makes sense. Again, he's not a guy who often is under 20. When he is, he's usually getting you 25 that next night. But I was drawn to these two bigs, who I think are the most important players for these two basketball teams, really. And we know that is true of Victor Wembanyama, but I think that is still true also of Alperen Sengun. And for Sengun, he was injured for a little bit of a stretch, right? And I think he is, still struggled to find his full footing since coming back. That efficiency is starting to get there. What I have seen from him, though, are a couple of gaudy rebound games, right? And I think tonight, coming off of an 8-rebound performance, that ceiling on the glass is there. Wemby, similar story. Wemby, it's an odd one, but this year on back-to-backs, great rebounding the basketball. 14 rebound games, 15 rebound games. So I went to the DraftKings head-to-head player prop market and played Wemby and Sengun over 18.5 rebounds. So that's combined. And I think this number probably looks a little light because the first meeting this year, these two combined for just 17 boards, but they both led their respective teams in rebounds. And I think both, again, just offer up much higher ceilings. I'm curious to see what Wemby offers up tonight scoring-wise. He has scored 30-plus in 2 straight. Are we about to get on one of these runs where Wembanyama is giving us 30 consistently? I think that's interesting. We know it's within him. And as he gets a little bit healthier, right, because, he's another one who dealt with some injuries throughout this season, I think that is on the board. You saw it there a little bit, though. Best bets from our guys in the back. Sam's going to be on the Sabres money line over on the NHL slate. Buffalo tonight is on the road against the Nashville Predators. And then both AJ and Chris actually involved in the same game. AJ with an NC State money line play. NC State on the road against a Clemson team who I think you can tell numbers-wise, right, that 18 next to them, probably not that accurate relative to the maybe product they've necessarily put out this year. I'm not saying that they're, they belong in the 40s, but or is this a top 20 team, Clemson? doesn't maybe feel like it. So he's going to play NC State. And then Chris is on Darian Williams, over 12.5 points. Chris, routinely, I know, has always been a fan of these Williams props. And we'll see what he brings to the table tonight for the Wolfpack on the road. I'll get to my college picks in the next segment. Just elsewhere on the NBA tonight, it is, of course, a Tuesday. It does mean King of the Court is in play. And the point, rebound, assist market, whoever the leader is. No Joel Embiid tonight, so it's going to make Tyrese Maxey a popular option. Wemby, Sengun, and KD, all potential leaders from that Rockets-Spurs games. I am curious, though, where James Harden will land on the scale. Harden and the numbers without Kawhi remain gaudy. Kawhi is done for the rest of this road trip, so they're in Chicago. Harden has the second highest points, rebounds, assist prop on your slate tonight, behind just Luka Doncic, who projects to probably be the most bet guy here. Will Harden be top 3 most bet? If yes, then, hey, what are you going to do? But because, on a typical night where Kawhi is in, you're not going to see that many Harden clicks. Could there be value in the king of the court respect? I think that's on the board. I've not played anyone yet. In this moment, I feel a little drawn towards Anthony Edwards because he had the 50-point game, and now they're playing Utah. Who knows? Maybe he just goes for like 45. So it's tempting, but again, we'll see. And when we lock in King of the Court, we'll let you know. Let's get to the college basketball slate after this break right here on Game Time Decisions.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, college basketball time here on Game Time Decisions. We'll likely talk a little college football in the next segment after Indiana won the national championship tonight. Their game, basketball-wise, against Michigan is one that I thought I was going to be involved with, but I'm actually going to take that step back. You had So Michigan has done this before where they are very streaky against the number. And the game against Oregon, they were laying a ton. I played over. This was over the weekend, saying, like, listen, if they get right, then, they'll score 100. But if not, it means Oregon will kind of do their part. And it was going great until it wasn't. And the game, missed out by around 5 or 6 points or so. So you look at this game tonight back home, while I think that Michigan is the side, if I were to play it, I don't love fading this Indiana team off of a home loss, kind of embarrassing to Iowa. Like, you could get a very good Indiana effort tonight. Now, ironically, I wouldn't be totally stunned if some people were playing Michigan thinking that Indiana basketball players, I don't know. I mean, they were certainly watching the national championship game. It's not like they were at campus, like, partying. Like, that's not a thing. But I wonder if there's any bit of that. The Michigan team total was tempting. If I were to play this game, that's how I'd play it, but I am not playing this game. But I thought it was worth mentioning because when you get, the top 5 teams in the country on slate, people are going to be looking at those games. I'm not playing that game. At 7 o'clock, what I am going to play is a top 5 team in the country who's ranked 16th, and that's Florida. Florida is one of the 5 best teams in college basketball. They did not get off to that kind of start. That TCU loss really hangs over the head. But aside from that, by 6 to Arizona, by 1 at Duke, and by 4 against UConn, these are coin flip games, right? They are on a run. They have won 4 straight, all in impressive fashion at the minimum against SEC competition. They rank 11th in offensive and defensive efficiency. One of, I think, just 5 teams to rank top 11 in each metric. So I think the Gators, who I bet preseason for the national championship, again, at some point I'm going to play another team. There's a couple I've been considering, looking Big 12 probably. I feel good about where Florida's at. I do. I think tonight they're in a very interesting spot against an LSU team who has been much better than that 1-4 SEC record suggests. Beat Missouri at home, nearly knocked off Kentucky, played Vanderbilt I would say respectably at A&M, only a 3-point loss. My issue with LSU tonight, who's catching a ton of points, they have not played a defense anywhere near as good as Florida's. I just don't see them scoring much. And with Florida scoring 90-plus in 4 straight, I think offensively they could be in for a dip night. So I think this game could play more 82-65. Right on the number, right around that number, but well under your listed total. So I like Florida, LSU under the number. I love the over in St. Louis, Duquesne. I was so tempted to call him Duquesne just for the fun of it. St. Louis, though, is this up-and-down team, right? At 17-1, they find themselves ranked. They are good. And what stood out to me is they have not played a lot of similarly paced teams. Duquesne is, but they can't guard. So you look at the VCU matchup, they're not as quick as Duquesne. They're much better offensively, but they're also much better defensively. Now it was this bang-under game. No one could make a 3. That total was about 5-6 points higher. I think Duquesne will be up for the game, but again, I just think that means more pace. I think this game is played at a breakneck pace, goes up and down. I think St. Louis is live for almost 100. I think this flies over. Ranked, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. I like Arkansas. I think these are pretty even basketball teams. I think Vandy's metrics are a little too up there. I think we've seen that within the Texas and Florida results. I think they maybe got a little bit too much credit for beating Alabama. And Arkansas's just good. I understand they lost to Georgia. They got themselves in a hole. They dug out of it and then, ended up losing by double digits. That's fine. This is a good basketball team. They've lost road games. They've won home games. Louisville, Tennessee, they win at home tonight against Vandy. And then lastly, and look, why not? I'll say it. A team I'm considering for the national championship futures market is Kansas. Defensively, they're the real deal. Offensively, they have one of the best players in the country in Darren Peterson. And in his absence, all of these other guys got better. So it makes a difference there. That's the college card tonight. Let's talk college football after the break on SportsGrid.
they outlined for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Game time decisions here on a Tuesday night. I think we've done a nice job setting up the card. If you want to bet some NHL, we've got George Kurtz coming in next segment. It'll be great to get his action on the ice tonight. But I do want to talk a little bit about what everybody's talking about today, which is, of course, Indiana winning the national championship game, which it ends up being graded as an over because at close, 46.5, I know for a lot of people 47.5, it does go over that number. I feel awful for everybody who bet those numbers. This game was a dead under. One of my main beliefs, especially in college, but it's true in most football, special teams touchdowns pretty much lock in the over. Think about San Francisco, Seattle on Saturday. Rashid Shaheed returns that touchdown. That game snuck over the total. It's such an instant score. It makes a difference. And the block punt touchdown, I am sure, is the moment for many where it was like, oh no. And it's not that I didn't, as a 48.5 on open, didn't have those moments myself. I think we all have our processes. And it is one where I can personally say, hey, the process played out, right? Know what the look-ahead line was. See the overreaction. Bet it early because some people will see that number, see it move lower and be like, okay, I'm on the right side. I'll bet it now, right? I didn't care. I knew I liked the under. I was not at 47.5 going to be happy about it. At 46.5, I just wouldn't have flatly bet it. For me, I'm not saying it was a bad bet. It was a great bet. I'm saying how my brain is. So that worked out nicely. How we got there, though, right, in this game is Miami just started to hit some explosives. The 57-yard run by Mark Fletcher, the Malachi Toney plays. Well, all of a sudden in this game, finished 10 for 122 and a score. I actually think under the hat, someone in the back mentioned Malachi Toney for 10 receptions. Maybe I'm making that up in my head. But in some ways, it's like, yeah, that tracks. Like, of course, Malachi Toney was fed the football in this type of atmosphere. And he rightfully was. Because he projects to be a special player all 3 years at Miami, with one in the books and then two more before he heads to the NFL, which, again, all of that is incredible. The people today have talked about this Indiana team historically. And look, I think an unbeaten national champion will always be remembered fondly historically. I think for those who have vast college football encyclopedias, the Joe Lisi's of the world, right? I will allow them to tell it where they want to stack this Indiana group. I will say for me, recent memory, I am not running them to the top of the list, right? The 2019 LSU is where everybody goes. I've made my case for 2020 Alabama. I frankly don't even know if I would have had the conversation on my own. It's just people were having it. I don't know. Indiana at no point felt like that to me. They had a dominant first two games of the college football playoff against Oregon and Alabama, but that when they played good teams, we had good games. They won those games because they are a well-coached, smart football team, right? But at Oregon was a great game. At Iowa was a great game. At Penn State was a great game. The Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, close football games, right? But this team was able to win on the margins. And one of the things that this team always did was protect the football. And it's one of the reasons I think Fernando Mendoza is just such an easy pick. And there are a list of things that make Mendoza an easy pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. There aren't other good quarterbacks. They need a quarterback. That primarily, right? But it is also understanding when a guy is just checking boxes that when others have checked, they've been hits. Guys who have to win a national championship, the Heisman Trophy, and go first overall that season. Burrow, Cam Newton. Cam Newton won a league MVP and went to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow, in his second NFL season, went to a Super Bowl. Fernando Mendoza, in recent NFL draft, we've seen these guys who have won Heisman trophies and then had to play another season, right? We're having multiple years out of program. So Mendoza's a little jarring. But don't be scared because it's very reminiscent of Joe Burrow. And while he did not put up the 5,000 yards, 50, touchdowns that Burrow did, he had an A-plus efficiency season. 41 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. Over 9 yards an attempt, completing 72% of his passes. He's flashed the ability as an athlete, as a runner, and he's not scared to make big throws. It's not a 3rd and 5 swing pass. It's not a 3rd and 5 check down. It's a 3rd and 5 20-yard back shoulder that he throws with confidence. And one of the things that I will always believe that when a quarterback offers up, appreciate it. But if they can do it against high-level competition, don't ignore it. More touchdowns than interceptions. He did it against both Alabama and Oregon. That doesn't even make sense. He had 8 touchdowns to 5 incompletions across those 2 football games. I think Fernando Mendoza is can't miss, and I think that Raiders job is sneaky much better than everybody realizes, in large part because it appears I'm much higher on Fernando Mendoza than everybody else. And for Indiana, right, when we look towards next season, early national championship odds, I have no issue with them being near the top because we're 200 plus days away from playing football, right? But I think they will learn that it is going to be very difficult to replace Fernando Mendoza. What was the difference between last year's Indiana and this year's Indiana? A number of things, but Fernando Mendoza stands out to me the most of them, right? Curtis Rourke wasn't a real prospect at the NFL level. Mendoza goes first overall. Teams that do stand out in next year's national championship market, I don't know how Notre Dame doesn't. They are sat there, near favorites. And speaking of favorites, Notre Dame projects to be maybe a touchdown favorite in every game they play. Notre Dame hosts Miami in November, Heck, outside of that and a trip to BYU, they could be double-digit favorites in every game. You know the Irish are going to be there. Oh, and they just so happen to have the Heisman Trophy favorite. If anything, you could use that to make an argument for a shorter number. The other number that you know people will be honed in on, Lane Kiffin and LSU. Outside of that top 5, but way shorter than Ole Miss, who's back at 45-1, and this is why Lane left. And Lane Kiffin will begin his journey at LSU against Clemson. No walk in the park historically, but if he can win that game, he gets a layup against La Tech, and then it's the return to Oxford, where we get to see what type of group has Lane Kiffin fully put together. But a lot of people think they have the inside track on Jordan Seaton, the argued number 1 player in the portal, the offensive tackle out of Colorado. They've landed Sam Levitt. And early, a team that made the semifinal didn't have their coach because that coach knows that going to LSU is going to always put you closer to winning a national championship. And he's not wrong about that. And it makes LSU, in January, a bit tempting. We'll talk some hockey with George next.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which it's done. Right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Game Time Decisions live on a Tuesday night. Our guy George Kurtz joins us here. George does an excellent job across the SportsGrid network, focusing in on NFL, hockey, does a great job with FST, of course. I want to start with the hockey in case anybody wants to bet that slate. George, we appreciate you stopping by to help us out. There's 3 7 o'clock puck drops. The Blue Jackets and the Senators, the Lightning and the Sharks, and then Montreal and Minnesota. Do you like any of those 3 games?
You know, we discussed this last week, Kevin, right? Tuesday, we look at the Monday slate. What teams are coming off back-to-back nights? Usually it's not a big thing because Monday's usually a small slate. But the last couple of Mondays, including this week, Monday's been a big slate, right? Yesterday, because of the holiday here, we had, I think, 10 games. Now we have that tonight. So we can look at that, see who's playing back-to-back. And you mentioned Sharks playing back-to-back. Now, the Sharks are sort of like the Rockies of baseball. They're going to play some wide-open hockey. So the first thing we look at with the Sharks is, hey, we want to take the over. All right, they are playing Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. We're still getting a decent price at minus 102 here. I do expect Tampa Bay to win the game, but I'm not laying 330. And the Sharks are good enough, by the way, where I don't feel like great about putting this in a parlay either. Our number says 300 there. I went up 30 cents. I got minus 330 currently here. So we are getting a lot of money on Tampa Bay tonight. I think you're going to take that and you're looking more at the goal line, but I'm not laying minus 134. You could look at Kucherov, maybe to get over 1.5. He's Gensel, anytime goal scorer. That's how I'm attacking this game. The game I like a lot as far as the 7 o'clock slate, not so much just to win or lose, but I like the over again. Ottawa and Columbus. Ottawa they don't have a goaltender. All right, they lost their goaltender, Allmark, who's on a personal leave. Should be back shortly, by the way. And their backups are Merrillanen and Reimer. Reimer's going to play tonight. So you're talking he's probably third string for this team. Columbus doesn't have much either. All right, so I expect goals to be scored here. So I'll take the over in this game. Probably my favorite play at 7 o'clock here. The other 7 o'clock game, Minnesota and Montreal. Minnesota played last night. So they're another team I automatically look against them here. I sort of lean towards Montreal minus 134.
All right, so a couple of looks early on in this NHL window. The primetime game tonight, George, or the first primetime game, I should say, is Dallas and Boston. Is there anything in that one we should be looking to play?
You're getting a really good price on the Dallas Stars. Now, I know they haven't played as well lately. For my money, Kevin, Dallas is the second best team in the NHL behind the Colorado Avalanche. Now, when I say that, they're pretty far behind Colorado. All right, it's up here and up here. So it's not all that close, but still, they have a second best team here. We're getting a minus 142 currently here. So I'm leaning towards Dallas here, which I would have been leaning towards anyway. Boston has played better than expected this season, but they're not in Dallas's class here. I want to take the under as well. It's plus 112. Wouldn't be a big bet. I don't like taking too many unders, minus 5.5 here. The empty nets, one thing with the NHL, it's so much different than when, 4 years ago, they pull the goalies so early nowadays. You could easily get 2-3 empty nets. A 2-1 game could turn into 5-1 real quick. So I'm very careful when I take unders, but I'll take the plus money on the under.
Yeah, I had a stretch. I think it was like 2 Tuesdays in a row. There was a big enough hockey game where I bet one over, didn't get enough empty netters, and then I bet an under, and I was like, oh, okay, we're going to get 100 of these. And I was like, all right, I'm going to step back from the NHL. I don't need to be here right now. There's enough going on. George, the late night primetime game, Edmonton and New Jersey. Connor McDavid and the boys at home. We know they're going to be booked as favorites. How do you find some value in this game?
This is a little tougher to find value in the game because New Jersey is going with the backup goaltender. That's Jake Allen. Although Allen's fine. He's not a bad backup goaltender here, but the Devils have probably been one of the more disappointing teams. We're at minus 178. That's a little bit over my comfort level when betting a favorite here. I'm generally a 160, 165 guy here. So a little bit over my comfort level here. That being said, I'm still doing it. Edmonton's at home playing very well. They're not going to have Leon Draisaitl tonight. He also left the team for personal reasons. I think he'll be back later this week. You're talking a top 5 player in the NHL. That's going to hurt. That being said, we're still talking the Oilers playing well here. I want to take the over in this game. All right, I really do, because I think, once again, they're going with the backup goaltender. It's Jarry, depending on what you consider him, Jarry and Picard. I don't think either one's really much of a starter there. And the backup than Allen here. So I think goals are coming tonight, but I do worry I need Jersey to get some of those goals. Evans will score 4. I have little doubt about that. Evans will get me 4, maybe more. But I need Jersey to get at least 2 to 3. I don't know if I can count on that. They've been very inconsistent this season. But still, Edmonton, Kevin, either I play the over or I never play an under with Edmonton. All right, you're not doing that with Connor McDavid. You're just not doing that.
So I was at a 1-year-old's birthday party a couple of Saturdays ago, and the one thing I can be sure of is that 1-year-old is not going to be swayed to become a Rangers fan, as that was on the day that they lost 10-2 to the Boston Bruins. The game was on in the background, and nobody was like, it's not a huge hockey contingent, George, but it was enough eye-catching to be like, another one? Are you seeing this? Like, it's just outrageous. The whole thing for the Rangers, right? I know they have routinely been in the mix. This year, it doesn't feel like they just lose. Like every time the Rangers come up, it's like the worst thing you've ever heard. It's like, yeah, you know they can't score any time they're at home. It's like, what? Like what is your assessment, George, on this New York Rangers team?
When you talk about the NHL as a whole, I would think the Rangers are the most disappointing team in hockey. Kevin,
Wow.
I'm not saying we expected them to be Stanley Cup winners here, but contenders? You have Shesterkin, you had JT Miller, Zibanejad, Panarin, Adam Fox. There are a lot of teams that would like to start with that five, and you work from there here, but it just has not worked out. You mentioned nobody can tell you why they weren't scoring at home for the first couple of months of the season. That was just weird. They literally could not score at home. They were at one point they were on pace to be shut out for the most times in NHL history, which is like, you got to be kidding me. Too many good players here. And then we have the GM Chris Drury come out last week and pretty much tell everybody we're selling. All right, so listen, it's wide open, man. You want Panarin? He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's a rental. Go ahead, make an offer. Zibanejad, make an offer here. I think the only two Rangers that I don't think will be they wouldn't deal unless you really knock them over would be Shesterkin, the goaltender, and Fox, the defenseman. Anybody else can be had from the New York Rangers. They'll be very active. And by the way, if you're a Ranger fan, if you're gonna be a bad team, you want to suck. They'll get a lot of draft picks of top players at the deadline. They will, because they have good players here. They just didn't play well together. For whatever reason, didn't play well together.
Quickly, George, 'cause I want to ask some NFL stuff to you on the other side. Who's the best guy of that bunch that could be dealt then out of New York?
Panarin. Panarin is a goal-scoring difference maker. If they'll get a lot for him, he could definitely help somebody.
All right, it's going to be really interesting to follow. Let's talk some of these head coach openings with George Kurtz. Two teams looking for coordinators, Eagles and Cowboys. Next.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, Game Time Decisions. We are back with you on a Tuesday night. And we've gone through the NHL slate tonight with George, but I also want to be able to talk a little bit of football here. We're going to talk to NFL insider Adam Kaplan around a lot of the coaching stuff. One thing that both George and I, as with our current favorite teams, being the Eagles and Cowboys, we have very important coordinator positions to solve. I think both George and I would say the coordinator slots that we're trying to fill are the sides of the ball that we look at as to what went wrong Dallas's defense, Philly's offense. And we're used to, head coaches, right? Like, hey, one domino falls and then the rest will follow. But, George, you were kind of saying so many of these guys that are being looked at for coordinator jobs are also being looked at for head coaching jobs. I mean, it feels like you'll be lucky to know who's going to end up in Philly, in Dallas by February.
It's a mess, right? Are some teams still waiting? I mean, there's still 4 teams in it, right? The final 4 there. Are they still waiting to see who gets eliminated this Sunday, to see maybe if we want to interview one of those guys? So it's a mess because there's so many openings, right? There's still, 6 head coaching openings, and there's much more coordinator openings. So everyone's fighting for the same job, and they're all interviewing the same people, all right? And by the way, I don't think Dallas is a preferred destination for anybody because Dallas has gone through what, Kevin? 4 defensive coordinators in 5 years now. Quinn made it a couple of years before he left to be a head coach. Other than that, you're fired. I mean, if I'm there and I'm a top guy, yes, it's the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, I get it. It's the Cowboys star, blah, 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 America's team. But you're dealing with Jerry Jones and you don't know about your job security. Plus the defense sucks. I mean, I guess you have nowhere to go but up. And you probably will use those 2 first-round picks. But I think everyone's trying to get the best deal they possibly can. I think these coordinators now realize, hey, maybe I want to go with the Eagles, good team, should win the NFC East again. Maybe I want to go with Buffalo, maybe I want to go with this team. I think they can more pick and choose now. So they're taking their time rather than taking the first job that becomes available, that becomes offered to them.
The one thing that, just to the notion that we're talking about, I remember when the Cowboys DC job opened up, Diana Rossini of The Athletic said, keep an eye out on Brian Flores for the job, whose name is right now being kicked around for countless, head coaching opportunities, and is already I don't need DC. I don't even know how that would work. Like, there's just so much confusion, and it feels like we just keep adding job after job to the cycle, George. We have filled a couple of these, and I guess since we're talking NFC East, we might as well stick here. What have you made of the Giants landing John Harbaugh, the first of all of the falling dominoes?
Well, I mean, now that Buffalo opened up, I wonder if Harbaugh's like, oh, if I just would have waited. And I'm not saying that, by the way. He may be very happy because the Giants, yes, and you're the Eagles guy, I'm the Cowboys guy. The Giants could have a future, Kevin. I mean, Dart looks like the real deal. I have my doubts if he could ever play 17 games or 18, which is going to come. Scatterbo, all right, I like him as a running back. I don't know if he's ever playing 17 games either. I think he'll have a shorter career because of his style of play. I don't know how Neighbors comes back. Is he going to be that guy? We'll see. The defensive line looks great. So, I think this could be something that we have to worry about. I do. And you do seem to have the right head coach. And he went to the Giants. It's a storied franchise, right? The marriage generally will leave you alone. And he has all the power in the world here. My problem is I said this about Daboll as well. I thought they got it right with Daboll. I was wrong. I think they got it right with Harbaugh. But we'll see. This organization does seem to be stuck in quicksand sometimes. So we'll see here. But I do wonder if Harbaugh's like, I could be with Josh Allen. Why didn't I wait a week?
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair. But I also tend to believe, George, that Buffalo is going to keep it. I feel like, because everyone is very focused on the fact they have not fired Brandon Beane. And firing McDermott is a tough decision. So much so that I don't think they would have been scared of making multiple tough decisions to get rid of Beane. I feel like their head coaching search is going to be 2 men deep in either Daboll or Brady. I don't know if you get a similar read, but that's my read on the situation.
And I agree with you, by the way. I really hope it's Brady because if it's Daboll, and Beane got promoted, it means they both failed up. Right? Beane's been fired, too. It wasn't all McDermott's fault. I mean, they both failed up, right? Daboll was the last season with the Giants, by the way, Daboll looked like a chicken with his head cut off sometimes. Like he was just, he knew it was happening and he was lost. And now he might get the Buffalo job here. So I sort of hope it's Brady here. But I think Daboll's right in the running there. And if they, like I said, if Daboll gets the job, Daboll and Beane will have failed up. For McDermott to get fired and not Beane, I think was a crime. All right, Beane had failed this team. Where's the number 2 wide receiver? Where's the number 1 wide receiver?
Don't worry, A.J. Brown is right around the corner. George Kurtz, excellent as always. Speaking of trades, that NBA trade deadline is going to sneak up on you. We'll talk about it next.
outlined for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Game time decisions. Great to have everybody here on a Tuesday night. We're going to do some Kevin 7 quickly. Just getting underway under Florida, LSU 158.5. We are also going to get Duquesne St. Louis on the over at 164.5. Two more college plays. Those are a little bit later on. AJ's best bet is NC State moneyline. Chris in that game, Darian Williams, who opened the scoring, would have made 3 over the 12.5 points on the ice. A game that is going to be starting in an hour. Sabres moneyline for Shamwai, the sports guy. So let's talk a little NBA deadline because, we were promised a historic NBA offseason that didn't really deliver. And perhaps the make good could be an explosive NBA deadline. So there are 7 names that are worth discussing. It's I think a lock that not all 7 will be dealt. I think it is similarly a lock that we will see guys move, though, from this list. So we'll start at the bottom, which is of the names here, maybe the least headline grabbing, yet the likeliest of the bunch, which is Jonathan Kuminga to be traded out of Golden State. Though, unfortunately, fortunately for Kuminga, maybe the Jimmy Butler injury throws all of this into disarray. The Kuminga stuff in Golden State has been, in simple terms, ridiculous. They drafted a lottery talent who at times has looked like he is capable of delivering on that promise, yet they clearly do not trust him whatsoever, so they constantly DNP him, coach's decision, and yet there are other teams that want to pay him multi-year deals, and they refuse to let him leave because they think he has upside, except then the coach never plays him to show that that is actually true. It's a mess. Kuminga could be dealt anywhere, and I think it would be nice to see a fresh start. It's on the board that Kuminga was upset as anybody that Jimmy went down, because now we have to do another fake stint of Steve Kerr trusting Jonathan Kuminga when he clearly does not. We'll see if a move actually happens. Next up is the most impactful name on this list, which is Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Milwaukee Bucks are awful. Giannis is incredible. Is he going to be willing to push out of Milwaukee? I can tell you that the prediction markets are thinking it is likelier by the day Now, it's still a heavy favorite. He stays with the Bucks, but they are thinking it is likelier. And Giannis being dealt would wildly shift the NBA market. We talked a lot last week about the world where he lands up in San Antonio. The favorite, though, is he still ends up in New York Knicks, which would make them clear-cut favorites in the East. And if he does end up in Knicks, you'd have to imagine that means Karl Anthony Towns is dealt, who is another name to watch here heading into the deadline, because all of a sudden, the vibes around the Knicks are so bad, and the desire to make a move seems so inevitable that Karl Anthony Towns being dealt for Giannis, which was initially, I thought, the only way it would happen, doesn't seem to be the only option on the board. It now appears Cat could be dealt for Jaren Jackson Jr. or Miles Bridges and pieces out of Charlotte. It feels as if there is a thought in New York that it could be an addition by subtraction. I don't know if I wholly agree, but a group that wants to push all in for this season may have no choice but to smash the panic button, because that's kind of seemingly where they are right now in New York. And Karl Anthony Towns is a name that I think we're going to hear more and more about as we get closer to the trade deadline. Chris Paul makes this list because truly here on this show 2 weeks ago, I found out Chris Paul was still on the Clippers roster. I did not know that. I thought Chris Paul was cut. I cannot believe he is still a Clipper. He is right now on Kalshi 38% to be traded before the deadline. That is a shame. Are you telling me that Chris Paul has either played his final NBA game or is going to retire? Can the Clippers just bring him back? Like, if they don't make the playoffs, which they are heavily favored not to, is there any harm in letting Chris Paul play like the final 5 games of the season? The whole thing is a mess. But if the Clippers refuse to let him play, then just trade him. Let Chris Paul go out somewhere on his own terms. 3 more to go. Ja Morant, a name that is even higher up on the prediction markets at 44% to be traded at the deadline. Shams Charania puts out that Memphis is listening. And I think that usually is enough to say this player will be moved. And Ja Morant is coming off of a stretch that really made, not even a stretch, a game that made the Memphis people smile. In 28 minutes, he scored 24 points with 13 assists and 5 rebounds. Shot it efficiently, and they dominated the Magic, winning by 17 points. And I think the Memphis faithful should take that game, and instead of using it as the example to say, let's stick with Ja, send that tape to the suitors and move on. Because it just does not feel like this is going to work. Because there's a lot of issues at hand occasionally with Ja Morant, but yet maybe the least discussed one is he's rarely healthy. So if a team wants to take that gamble on Ja Morant, let him take that gamble. Copy, paste, Anthony Davis, rarely healthy. Someone else should take the gamble, though, because AD has a way, way higher ceiling than Ja and is far more likely to impact winning. That's just inarguable for this team or for this player. And Anthony Davis being dealt is something that it feels like should be a guarantee. Yet you will see on the prediction markets where the incumbent, yes, is always the favorite, right? At 67%, it feels like higher than you would think, right? Like you wouldn't expect it to be that high. I think one of the most difficult elements of this Anthony Davis stuff is we just never know where he's going to go. Because there's been moments where we thought, hey, AD is going to end up with the Knicks, the Warriors, the Hawks. Now it's like it's a playoff team or bust. Oh, he's going to get surgery. Oh, he's not getting surgery. Here's the thing, the reason why I still believe Anthony Davis will be dealt. It doesn't make sense for him to be on the Mavericks. This team is better off losing basketball games than winning the rest of this season. And Anthony Davis, value, I cannot see it increasing. Again, they actually already played this game and let it decrease. AD should be dealt. This last one is the least likely. It is one that I have talked about probably to a degree that some of you will roll your eyes. Yet I saved it here at the end, so I won't be able to spend the entire segment on it, which I would have if I started with LeBron. LeBron James being dealt is just something that makes sense for everyone. The Luka, LeBron, Reeves trio is not a perfect fit. And it is a Lakers team that is not serious about winning a championship this year. And if that's their prerogative while having the second favorite to win MVP, then go ahead. Be my guest. But LeBron has looked like LeBron since we got to January. And that means the greatest player of all time can still contribute to a team who's interested in winning a championship. So the Lakers can continue to sell their fans on drafting kids that are doing fourth grade math homework. Let LeBron go play real basketball. Probably in Cleveland. Maybe New York. Rather it not be Golden State. I don't care. But stop with this Lakers team. You're wasting year 23 of the greatest player of all time. We'll be right back on Game Time Decisions.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Time Decisions. We are live on SportsGrid, and we knew it would be a busy time in the NFL season. I do not know if we knew it would be this busy. We have NFL insider Adam Kaplan here with us, and Cap, not for the first time during this coaching cycle, guys are getting hired at like midnight Eastern time. Yeah. Robert Saleh, the latest to Tennessee. Just curious, anything you heard around that? I know a lot of people are now waiting with bated breath who his offensive coordinator certainly will be.
Yeah. So Saleh basically, Kevin, his interview was phenomenal, I was told yesterday with the Titans. I give Mike Briganti credit, the general manager. It was his call. He would tell, and he did, the owner, Amy Adams Strunk, okay, this is who I want to hire. And she just has to say, okay, we'll do it. But it was his call. And he didn't hire a close friend of his. It's not easy to do that because you always wonder, Kevin, after something like this, what's the relationship going to be between Nagy and Bergonzi? But it doesn't matter. For Bergonzi, this is his guy, Robert Saleh. I know the record was terrible with the Jets, but we know what happened. They didn't have a quarterback. Well, they have a quarterback. Someone in the Titans building told me last week that for a defensive head coaching candidate to win it, he had to have a great plan for offense, which told me at least Bergonzi was open to it, okay, because this person obviously talked to Bergonzi. So I'm very interested. Let's go to it. Let's go to the offensive coordinator candidates. I'm told that Brian Daboll still well liked in the building. He interviewed for the job last Friday, the head coaching job. I'm told that he still has people in the building who are very interested in him to be the offensive coordinator and play caller, by the way, for the Titans going forward. Now, there'll be some other names that will emerge. Brian Daboll is going to be a popular name with some other head coaching candidates, by the way. Also, look at Buffalo, where he grew up. We know what a great job he just did with Josh Allen. Daboll's a pretty popular guy here. We'll see where he lands. Mike McDaniel, by the way, Kevin, very popular. He's had head coaching interviews. He's going to be an offensive coordinator calling plays. He's not going to be a non-play calling OC. He's going to be calling plays somewhere at the very least. Very hot name on the coordinator list. So that's where those are at. But my number one name to get hired, as I was telling you before we got on here, is Jesse Minter, the Chargers DC. If you stacked up the best and most likely to get jobs, he is my number one.
That'll be interesting. I know there's some thought Baltimore, certainly from the prediction markets, could be interested in Minter. Cap, just because you mentioned the name Matt Nagy, his role has been filled by Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City.
Yep.
What is next for Matt Nagy? Is he interviewing for other jobs? Is he going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere?
That's a great question. So I was told last week, I actually put this on WHB last, I think, Thursday. I said it's going to be Eric Bieniemy, no matter what happens with Matt Nagy. Andy wanted him back because he's going to be more of the run game coordinator. Remember, Andy calls the plays, but Eric knows the offense. And I think Matt will be looking to call plays. It's not a guarantee. He'll be working somewhere in the league this year. It is not known. I have actually looked into this about what who he could be attached with here. He does know some of the head coaching candidates, but the thing is, because when you know a guy's interviewing for a head coaching job, it's got a real good shot, you start moving to plan B. And that's the thing that Matt Nagy now battles, is because some of these head coaching candidates look for other options because they weren't sure if he'd be available or not.
So Buffalo making that decision to move off of Sean McDermott obviously didn't come lightly, Cap. What a lot of people have been asking, so I'm wondering if you can offer up any insight, is how Brandon Beane also kept his job. I'm curious what your read is right now in Buffalo.
Terry Pagula, the owner, I've known this, for several years. He had a very good relationship with Sean McDermott. But here's the bottom line. He put the blame on McDermott and the coaches, Pagula, the owner, not the general manager, Brandon Beane. Now, there's this belief around the league that if you're being honest about the roster, it's above average to good. It's not elite. It's not even very good. And Beane has not done a good enough job of putting talent around Josh Allen. One league source told me their receivers, all of them are about number threes. Like Khalil Shakir has been really a good player for them. If you put him on other teams, he'd probably be a three, but he's kind of like their one. He's paid, very well. He's been a good. That was a great draft pick. But the problem we know this, is Keon Coleman. Although he came on a little bit late, Kevin, he was supposed to be their number one receiver, their X receiver, which is that single side receiver, second rounder last year. He's been mostly a bust to this point. That's hurt them. Their defense was well coached by McDermott. Great scheme, probably overachieved a little bit. Lack of playmakers. I'm just being honest with you. That's I ask people when they watch their tape, especially when they're going against them, what do you think of this team? Well coached. No, I say all that. Beane's a good general manager. Why wasn't he fired along with him? Because again, Pagula is blaming the coaches. He's not blaming the general manager. And most of the time, Kevin, it's the GM that stays and the head coach gets fired. That's just That's just the way it is. It's been like that my entire career. I get it's a great question you ask, but they tend to point the finger at the head coach and less at the general manager. It's just the way it is.
I'll end on this, and Cap, we'll talk. I know at minimum this weekend we'll get more clarity around these things. But have you heard anything on Sean McDermott with some of these openings? Now, I imagine he'll be sought after.
He is going to be. Yep, he is. He is. I would look for teams like Pittsburgh, Baltimore would be two teams to look at, just because of Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Ravens, and I know John Harbaugh is not really a defensive guy, though he was a defensive backs coach for the Eagles for 1 year before he became the Ravens head coach. But they're going to look to keep it the same with that defensive mentality. In Pittsburgh, as I keep telling people, keep asking me, yes, an offensive coordinator, an offensive guy could do it, but they want to run the ball and win with defense. And Sean McDermott could do that. He could win throwing the football, or he could win it by running the football. McDermott's going to be on some lists. Now, whether he gets another one remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to follow. And Cap, that's why, we call you in, because there's a lot happening there. NFL insider Adam Kaplan, we appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, great stuff. As always from Cap. McDermott, I've seen some people say, could become more interesting if he's able to bring Joe Brady with him. And I think that's what makes the Buffalo situation very interesting, is if they go with Brian Daboll, you'd have to imagine that frees up Joe Brady to go elsewhere, perhaps hand in hand with Sean McDermott. We'll update the live board after the break on SportsGrid.
The outlines for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done. Right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, tons and tons of top 25 action live right now. Clemson and NC State, that's even at 21 a pop. What's D. Will have after that early three for our guy Chris? He's at 5. Not super efficient early, but hey, he's at 5. Michigan just smashing Indiana, 19-4. It's funny. I hadn't considered the leading scorer for Indiana hasn't made a field goal. That's always good. I just wonder if any of you out there bet Michigan. Did any of it have to do with the Hoosiers winning the national championship last night? I'm just curious. Just curious. I'm not saying that it did, but they are 1 of 15 from the field, 0 of 10 from 3. Man, that is something. If this game was at Indiana, do you think it would have been a bad showing from in terms of the crowd, or do you think it would have been good? I guess so now Indiana is on the road. Oh my gosh, folks, a week from tonight. On the road against Michigan, at Rutgers, and then at home against Purdue, where you can guarantee Sig and that football team is showing up. We already have upset alert. Or Purdue is going to crush their dreams and beat them by 20. That's already next week. Indiana, Purdue, we're watching. That's all I know. That's going to be fun. Florida, LSU, right now, Gators leading. Game trending under, early, trending under. St. Louis, Duquesne, trending over. Duquesne battling. We like what we see. It's early. Iowa State's up pretty good on UCF. They're doubling it up right now. That's 25-12. We didn't talk any Miami of Ohio, Kent State, actually. So one of the interesting things, obviously, with the latest AP poll is you ended up getting some respect for two non-power teams in St. Louis and Miami of Ohio. Again, all it took for those teams was to be 17-1 and 19-0. One of the let me make sure that this is still the case here with Miami of Ohio is, and again, I know not everyone loves these. I don't really care. I think they're valuable. In the MAC, Miami of Ohio, by far, isn't the number one team on KenPom. They're a top 100 team, okay? They're a top 100 team, but it's actually Akron who, again, just from the efficiency metrics on KenPom, grades out as one of the 65 best teams in the country. I wonder if could the MAC be a two-bid league? You'd have to imagine the only way that happens, though, is actually that Miami of Ohio is the at-large bid, right? Like, I can't imagine Akron is, who have 4 losses already this season, with 2 of them being to Yale and Murray State. They did play Miami of Ohio. They actually lost by 3. They don't play again. It feels like one of those inevitable meetings in a MAC championship game. Again, could we get a 2-bid MAC? That would be interesting. They were tonight closed as dogs, actually, against Kent State. Kent State pushing to favorites. It made all sense in the world. You could see. But I didn't love the spot necessarily. Like Miami of Ohio, off of nearly being upset by Buffalo at home, winning it in overtime, and then getting ranked. Like, you were going to get a good effort. It's early. They are up 10. I think you will have spots to fade Miami of Ohio. And I think those spots could very well be every game after this. Like, they'll play UMass at home, right? They probably project as monstrous favorites in that basketball game, and you could end up getting some value. Some of the other spots, by the way, on the college basketball board tonight that I'm not on, but, we take a look at. Oregon, Michigan State. Ducks gave Michigan a run. Couldn't make it happen. We'll see how Sparty fares now on the West Coast. Baylor's a light home dog to Texas Tech. This Baylor team's not very good. They're not awful, but they just can't seem to close the door in any of these games. This is a now or never spot for the Bears. I'm not playing it. It's a now or never spot. Mizzou home favorites against Georgia. I see the vision. I'm not running to the window to play it. I don't think Missouri's that good. I do like their coach, but we'll let that one ride. We'll see if the Georgia offense shows up in a big way. One update that we did get is Bill Self will not be there for Kansas tonight, and that could maybe be impacting that point spread a little bit. We will see if that's a long-term thing. When I say long-term, I don't mean all season, but multiple games. Certainly something to watch. We're going to talk to Brady Cannon. Next, a little golf, a little football right here on Sports.
they outlined for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
GameTime Decisions. We are live on SportsGrid on a Tuesday night. We've got Brady Cannon joining us, who we've talked all NFL season with, and we will talk some conference championship games momentarily, but maybe I'll embrace it. Maybe I am a golf guy. The Amex begins Thursday, and it's a weird one. It's an interesting one. We've got some big names here. So, Brady, can we just start with, can you kind of inform people what the setup is at this golf tournament? Because if I'm not mistaken, it's not your typical play two, cut it on Friday, and then we go into the weekend type of situation, right?
Yeah, it is a very different one. And Kevin, in all my years, I have never hit an outright winner at the American Express. I think I honestly have hit an outright winner at every tournament at some point in the last 25, 30 years, or however long I've been doing this. I don't think I've ever hit one at the Amex. And if you just look at the last 7 years, it tells you how random it is. We had John Rahm win as a tournament as the betting favorite. Sepp Straka last year made a lot of sense. Other than that, there has 4 times been guys that are triple-digit odd winners, anywhere from like 150 to 1 to 500 to 1 to win. It was a couple of years ago, Nick Dunlap won as an amateur. I mean, it is so random here. It's very, very difficult to predict. And I think a lot of that goes into what you're asking. It's a pro-am. You know, it used to be the Bob Hope Desert Classic, and you'd have all the celebrities here, and President Gerald Ford, and, you know, Bing Crosby, of course, he started it at the AT&T up at Pebble Beach, Glenn Campbell, all these guys, Sinatra. And now it's just a bunch of CEOs that nobody knows who they are. And so it leads to very long rounds with these amateurs. The golf courses are extremely easy. It's a rotation of 3 different courses, and they only give you shot link data on one of them. So it's very hard to accumulate any sort of historical notes on what works here, you know, what the secret sauce is. It's a birdie fest. All these courses are set up very easy so the amateurs can survive. The putting greens are made slower. The rough is basically non-existent. And there's no real rhyme or reason, you know, hit the ball straight, hit the green, make a putt, and move on. It's pretty vanilla, and you get the weirdest winners, you know, out of left field. And so it's difficult to predict. And I would recommend dumbing down your risk size. enjoy it. I like to use, really, Kevin, the first few weeks of the season as kind of my preseason. I'll bet a few outrights, but when we get to Torrey Pines, which is next week, that's when I feel I've got a little under my belt and I've got a feel for what's going on here. Of course, Brooks Koepka makes his debut next week, and that's when I'll start diving into some more top 20 finish position type stuff, head-to-head matchups. But this is a tournament where I'm still kind of looking to get my feet wet and get a feel for who's playing well and who's not. And you mentioned the cut. I'm sorry. Each one of the guys will play all 3 courses, and then it's a 54-hole cut. So the cut is not until Saturday afternoon, and then everybody goes back to the stadium course for a second time, and that's where they finish up on Sunday.
So I love that since it's so early in the season, we're talking process, right? Because I think for anybody who either, hasn't bet golf in a while or is, hey, you know what, maybe this year I'll get in the mix with the golf. One thing I noticed, Brady, with this tournament, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of them, is just how some of the numbers move already. Again, because I'm a weirdo who's doing fantasy golf drafts constantly, I know that Sam Burns was like 20-1 on Open and is now 27-1. So timing-wise, Brady, right? Like, if your numbers, we're going to talk NFL, right? We always talk about timing those spread bets, when you want to get in, timing-wise in the outright market. And maybe it makes no difference, but is there a spot where it makes a difference?
Well, I think you just have to become very good at reading the market. And that's a very tough task to master. It's part of handicapping. There's so many different styles of handicapping, right? There's situational, and there's data based, and there's metric based and analytical based, and trends you can look into. And then I think a big part of it is also reading the market and where's this line going to go next? 27-1 on Sam Burns seems like a pretty decent number. I think I've seen in the neighborhood of 25 or so. He's done very well at this tournament in the past. He's certainly one of the best players in the field. The field is actually pretty darn good this week, and we don't always get a great field here, but it's pretty good this week. Scotty Scheffler, of course, making his debut. And to further illustrate how this tournament is so random, Scotty Scheffler is probably the weakest field he ever plays against out of the entire year. And he's never won, and he's even missed the cut before. So it's really a tough nut to crack. I just said screw it and did not go with any of the shorter shots. The shortest number I played to win this thing this week was 80-1. And wow. Like I said, Nick Dunlap, 500-1. Hudson Swafford, who's he? He's won it twice at 150 or so to 1. Adam Long won it at like 300-1. Chased down Mickelson on a Sunday and, a 300-1 shot. Andrew Landry. It's a list of guess who that has won this thing over the years. So again, I like to treat it as preseason, get a feel for what's going on, and tread lightly this week and just try and learn more before we get into what is really the meat of the West Coast swing. We've got Torrey Pines, Pebble Beach, Phoenix, and then Riviera for the Genesis Invitational before we head out your way to Florida. So this is, kind of the calm before the storm. The next 4 weeks are big boy golf tournaments.
So, Britt, I do want to know then who those guys you played are, but can you also just give me an idea then on this Scotty starting point? 3-1, first time we're seeing him this season. You mentioned, though, that the field maybe, but again, I don't know, there's some names here, right? Henley was the favorite last week of the Sony. Right. Ludwig's Ludwig. We know the talent. Cantlay, Siwoo. So just what you make of the starting point for this Scotty numbers, and then let us know where you are locked in for this tournament.
Well, I guess I read earlier today that Scotty Scheffler has never won in his debut tournament of the season. Now, he hasn't been around forever, so that's not a huge sample size. But, maybe he takes a little warming up before he gets going as well. We know he's won at Phoenix a couple of times, and that's coming up in a few weeks. So he's never won at Torrey Pines before, and I don't believe he's ever won at Pebble before. But Phoenix, he's won twice. So maybe you kind of wait on Scotty until that rolls around. And again, with the randomness of this event, I don't really want to throw all my eggs in a 3-1 basket. Like I said, I'm going to pick some long shots here that make sense. This is interesting, Kevin. 15 out of the last 17 winners of the American Express have played at least one of the 2 weeks prior in Hawaii. Now, we only had 1 week in Hawaii this year, but 4 of my 5 selections all played in Hawaii. So I think you need to come in with a little bit of form to start your new year. You can't necessarily just come here cold. History would show that that's the case. If this is your first tournament, which it is for Scotty, it doesn't necessarily lend to winning this thing and hasn't in the past. I started out with Pearson Cootie at 80-1. He's been playing very well, he's only been on tour for a couple, 3 years, but he's really starting to come into form. He does great on the par 4s and the par 5s, and he really putted well last week in Hawaii with a 13th place finish. Then I went to Denny McCarthy, who's one of the best putters in the world, did play at the Sony last week, has finished as high as 6th here at the Amex. Then went to Patrick Rogers, who finished 3rd last week in Hawaii. Tour journeyman who's never won, but has had good finishes here. You feel like he's an Indiana guy, Kevin. Is he going to follow suit with the national champs? Maybe he gets his first win in miracle fashion. JT Poston at 100-1, another fantastic putter who's won in the desert, won here in Las Vegas before, has really good history here at the Amex. And then finally, Lee Hodges, who finished 6th here at the Amex in the past and also had a good week last week at the Sony. So, they make sense. And again, it's random this week. We'll see if we get lucky.
All right, awesome. Let's talk some championship lines with Brady after the break on SportsGrid.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
GameTime decisions here on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Brady Cannon. And I got to tell you, there's maybe a world where Brady and I, who talk lines and line movement, 2 games, maybe not enough. Brady and I are pros. We could make it work. I actually think these might be the 2 most fascinating lines of the postseason so far. The first one, pretty obvious, with no Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham in a quarterback. Brady, I am fascinated to know what you did with the number and what you make of the number that is out there, sitting mostly New England -5.5 on the road at the Broncos.
Well, we've heard pretty much since the jump, since we first heard Sean Payton announce that Bo Nix is going to miss the rest of the year with the injured ankle. We've heard that, Sean Payton handpicked Jared Stidham to be his backup quarterback. He obviously likes this kid a lot. And the last time we saw Jared Stidham, I remember right here in Las Vegas when he tore up the 49ers, who had a really good defense that year, by the way. And Stidham was magnificent. I think he's got the arm. He's been practicing with the Broncos basically for 2 years under Bo Nix. I think that, and we know Sean Payton and how he's able to design a system. Did it for Drew Brees, has done it for Bo Nix. I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop-off. Now, will the lights be too bright for this kid? That's going to probably be the tough part. But I tell you, this stadium ought to be just, playing with their hair on fire. And I believe the team will as well, because it's not only the fans, but the team, obviously, the fallen hero theory. Everybody knows they're up against it because, oh my gosh, our star quarterback is gone. The fans, the players, you name it. I think these guys are going to be on all out alert, and you're going to see an incredibly inspired effort out of the Denver Broncos. Now, as far as the line, they were a 1.5 point favorite over the Buffalo Bills, right? And I think everybody considered the Buffalo Bills to be better than the New England Patriots. So if Bo Nix was in this game, I think you could make a case that Denver would be a 2.5 or maybe even 3 point favorite. And yet here they are as a 5 point dog. So is an 8 point adjustment, and believe me, I saw a 6 upon open earlier in the week. Is an 8 or 9 point adjustment justified? It's almost justified for no situation at quarterback in the NFL. I read earlier today that, before the season started, the projected adjustment from Bo Nix to Jared Stidham was about 3.5 or 4 points. Now, obviously the year has gone on and things have changed, but still to almost triple that, I'm not buying it. And I wanted to bet against Denver this week because you know how it is when a team prevails, really due in large part to turnovers. It's kind of a smoke and mirrors situation where all the general public is seeing, oh, they beat the Bills. Wait a minute, let's dive in deeper. They were kind of given that game by how many times the Bills turned it over. But now the situation has kind of flipped for me. And I think this Denver team, like I say, is going to play with their hair on fire. Everybody's doubting them now and Stidham this and Stidham that. And you got to believe the public's just going to hammer the Patriots because they're not believing that Jared Stidham. I mean, does he even know how to play quarterback according to the masses, Kevin? So, right. Yeah, I think and I already did play a teaser here with Denver. I think 5.5 or 6 points might be enough. I think they can win the game outright, but I played a teaser here with the other contest in the NFC as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but the spread math point of it all specifically, anyone who thinks New England would have been booked as favorites with Bo Nix is kind of, without trying to sound mean, not living in reality.
Right.
Buffalo went to New England booked as favorites a month ago. Like, that's what happened. And the New England Patriots were a field goal favorite, essentially, to the Chargers and Texans. Yeah. Denver are grades out as better football teams than those teams. But so you have to justify this number, you have to believe that Bo Nix is actually like a top 7 quarterback in football and Stidham is one of the very worst backups in the league. And I don't know if anybody believes either of those things. I think Rams Seahawks is an interesting number as well, though, Brady, because the Rams, there were moments it looked like they were going to be booked as favorites in Seattle on that Thursday night game not too long ago. We have 2.5s now. I think there was some momentary 3 in the market. It's clear as day. We're far more likely to get Rams at +3 than Rams at a minus price in terms of a money line. I'm a little surprised at how Seattle sets up in this game.
One more thing. I want to go back to the Patriots and the Broncos real quick, and I think this is a key point in the handicap. The New England defense has really looked good. All of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, at the beginning of the year, they were great. They were very stout against the run, and then they fell off, and they had some gaps. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, they really have shown up here for 2 games in a row. But let's remember, the 2 teams that they have played, the Chargers and the Texans, have awful offensive lines. Now they're going up against one of the very best offensive lines in football, so they may not have as much success on defense. So get ready for that as well. I make the line, the Rams -1. That's what my numbers come to. Now, I know the Rams have not been looking like the Rams as of late the last couple of weeks, but gosh, it's now or never, guys. I mean, you've got to show up and look like the Rams once again, and I kind of believe that they will. There are strong 2.5s out there, but I tend to believe that this is going to close at 2.5 or less and not at 3. I just don't know if anybody can really not grab a 3 on the Rams and keep this line at 2 or 2.5. I don't think it's going to get there.
Yeah, I guess I should say, I don't expect it to be 3. But if you would have said, hey, before they made the line, likelier, Rams as favorites or a 3, I would have thought Rams as favorites. We're not getting the Rams closing as favorites unless we get new Darnold news, right? It's like, actually, it's worse, and Drew Lock is going to start. Could you imagine we get double backups this weekend? But again, that's not likely. It's the one note, Brady, and I'm going to have to try and see if I can find this. The Rams are in a conference championship game while being 0-2 against the number in the playoffs so far. Just historically, how often that happens. Because I feel like it has to be pretty rare. That's my assumption.
Well, it may be creating some value on the Rams because they have, underachieved in the odds makers, the public, what have you. I think they're the better team today.
I do. Brady, awesome as always. Best bets on the way out. It's sport.
The outline for Koepka are fantastic. I think it's perfect. It is punitive, but it's fair. You've got to levy some sort of fine, so to speak, for defecting, and I think they've done a wonderful job of being equitable and punishing him a bit at the same time. I think Brooks ultimately wants to be playing with the best.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis is shopping John Morant. Yeah, no kidding. They should have shopped him 2 years ago and got rid of him. The problem is, where does he go? Like, what team is going to sit there and deal with a dude who, A, has not been healthy or reliable both on the court or off the court? Like, who's trading for John Morant here, Coach?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I'll tell you what, guys. The insider scam is like the best insider scam in the business of, like, in the history of television. They don't know anything until their phone gets the text message in which the deal is done, right? We saw this with Quinn Hughes. We were told, he wants to play with his brothers. He wants to play with his brothers. Now they're saying that he wanted to be traded to Detroit. In other words, just say you don't know.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
What do you say? Little game time decisions on a Tuesday night. It's been a fun night here. Appreciate George, Brady stopping by, Adam Kaplan as well. We talked some NFL head coaches with Cap. Very interesting and again, we appreciate Cap. We have a limited amount of time. He made the point to us that Jesse Minter is the name he feels of all the potential guys, right? Because it feels like everybody is interviewing, right? Like everyone could get any job almost a little bit. he mentioned he feels that Jesse Minter is the guy. He's this heavy favorite for the Baltimore job. I cannot figure it out for the life of me. I just can't. Because I don't know how many jobs Minter is in the mix for outside of that. Looks like maybe Vegas, Michigan ties with Brady. Maybe there's something there. But Baltimore fired John Harbaugh. Hiring Jim Harbaugh as defensive coordinator, I just don't get it. Does that make sense to anyone out there? I guess the response would be, it doesn't matter. Those are separate things. Are they? Really, are they? Let's exist in this world for just a second, okay? Jim Harbaugh is still the coach at Michigan, and he decides this year he wants to go to the NFL, okay? And Jim is a highly sought-after candidate. Do we think Baltimore would be trying to hire Jim Harbaugh after firing John? No. Feels like the answer? I would think. Not even a little bit. Now, maybe you would say, Minter isn't as involved. Obviously not brothers, but, it just seems like you wanted to go in a different direction, except, no, actually, you didn't at all. And you wanted to go in the same direction, but you had no choice because your quarterback and your coach couldn't see eye to eye. So you got rid of John, but you want to stay as close to that as possible. It's just bizarre. I don't know. Again, if anybody thinks I'm grasping at straws, you can tell me. One other thing I'll let people know is these prediction markets, while they're really fun to track, it doesn't mean we can't see upsets. Matt Nagy was a legitimate 70+% favorite to get that job in Tennessee. And look, that's not a prediction market being off, right? Straight up odds would have said anything of the similar. A lot of reporters thought Nagy was going to get that job. So I think that it just means these things are not foregone conclusions, right? And there could be some value in going against Vance Joseph in Arizona, or maybe even Minter in Baltimore, for example. The other thing is, I'm not going to harp on this too much, but I actually think here on this show, myself on this network, I'll even, drag him into this. Yarnell, one of our producers. We've talked a lot about the Mahomes numbers, right? And they flatly line up with the enemy left, Nagy came back, things got worse. That is just true, okay? The Chiefs today bring back Eric Bieniemy. Andy Reid is essentially quoted as, this is exactly what we needed to get the offense back on track. Which means they fired Nagy for free. His contract ran out. They weren't bringing him back. They hired Bieniemy before the Titans made any decision on Nagy, right? So the Tennessee Titans almost hired a guy who now, it's like a couple degrees removed from the Titans considering giving the job to Kevin Patullo. Honestly, that is an insane thing that nearly happened. And now you do, by the way, now Bieniemy's back in Kansas City. What's that going to be? What's interesting, though, Bieniemy is heavily connected to running backs. The idea is that Bieniemy's going to help with the running game. It doesn't feel off the board the Chiefs try and trade up for Jeremiah Love. Just going to say it. Doesn't feel off the board. Remaining college picks, Arkansas, Mooney line, Jayhawks, minus the 3.5. If you want a little puck, look at me go. Whew! Sabres, Mooney line, the hottest two straight loss team in the history of the National Hockey League. In game.